Hello, welcome to part 3 of reviewing for the Missouri EOC. Let's go over format of the U.S. Constitution and the formal amendments. The preamble, We the People, and it states the 6 goals of the United States in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. Those are our goals. 7 articles, there are 13 in the Missouri Constitution, 7 in the U.S. 1 legislative makes the law. 2 executive executes and enforces the law. 3 judicial interprets. Article 4, how should states treat each other, called interstate relations. Full faith and credit means every state that you are in, you must obey that state's laws and give full faith to them. States can also grant privileges and immunities, such as in-state versus out-of-state tuition. States also enter into interstate compacts, such as the FBI roster, or if you study the Missouri River and how the Missouri River goes through so many different states, Missouri and Kansas might have a mutual compact on the flow of the Missouri River. Part 5, Article 5, how do we formally change the Constitution, the formal amendment process? Remember, we studied informal amendments too, those day-to-day changes and interpretations, how the president acts, how Congress chooses to make law, the cabinet and informal traditions. Those are different things on informal. Article 6, what document is supreme? The supreme document is the United States Constitution, treaties and laws after that, U.S. laws and codes. This is called the ladder of laws, by the way. So U.S. Constitution, treaties, etc., federal laws, state constitutions, state laws, and then municipal ordinances or laws as well. Article 7, ratification. 9 of 13 were needed to pass to have the Constitution go into effect. After that, we have made 27 formal changes to the Constitution. The first 10 are known as the Bill of Rights. As we go through these, you might remember the amendment process. It's easiest to look at this chart. Always on this side, Congress or the national government proposes. Most have been done by Congress proposing by 2/3 vote, and the state legislatures ratify it. 3/4 of the states have to do that. The Equal Rights Amendment was one of the most recent ones that was passed by Congress. It went to the states, but it failed and stalled in the states. It was just shy by 2 states of being ratified. The most recent one, however, is the 27th Amendment, which was proposed in 1791, ratified in the early 1990s. It's the one that took the longest to ratify. This is the process. You might review that one more time, but we have done this formally 27 times. The first 10 are the Bill of Rights. As you go through freedom of speech, press, petition, assembly, and religion, I want to focus on religion first. Remember 2 clauses, establishment and free exercise. Establishment means the government cannot sponsor nor can they establish an official religion for the United States. Supreme Courts have gone on to say they cannot prohibit it, but they can't advance it either, which makes a very fine line. A lot of cases that go to the Supreme Court deal with sponsorship of religion. Part 2, free exercise. The government cannot regulate how a person practices their beliefs unless it conflicts with social good. You have to prove deeply held religious beliefs in order for the Supreme Court normally to uphold it if it conflicts. We'll talk about further examples, but just know you can believe whatever you want. Nobody is saying the government is not coming in and telling you what you can believe, but they can hold people accountable on how they practice their beliefs. Establishment and free exercise deal with religion. Speech and press, again, you can believe whatever you want, but acting on your beliefs can be regulated. One rule, the clear and present danger rule in the court case Schenck versus the United States, was during World War I, where he encouraged people in a pamphlet, Schenck did, to not go in the draft. And the judges basically said words can be weapons and can be regulated, especially in times of war. Libel and slander both deal with false statements in the written and the spoken word, and you cannot do that. It's harder for politicians to be charged with that if you are in the limelight, but really newspapers, etc., can be held responsible for making false statements. Prior restraint is asking the media not to publish something. Normally, the government sides with the press and says they do have the right unless it conflicts with national security. That's called prior restraint. The Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, not a ton of court cases have dealt with this, but the Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Third, we have the right to quarter troops in times of peace. We don't have the right, you know that, no quartering of troops. The fourth deals with search and seizure. You must have a warrant or probable cause in order to conduct a search, and there's a ton of situations we can deal with. Two court cases, Mapp versus Ohio and TLO, deal with these things. The bottom line on Mapp is if evidence is seized illegally, it cannot be used in court. That is a huge precedent set by Mapp v. Ohio. New Jersey versus TLO. TLO are the initials of the student involved. And the Supreme Court basically said a school can conduct reasonable searches if there's reasonable suspicion, as opposed to trying to get probable cause and getting a search warrant. So they have leaned on the side of school officials for safety. The Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendment deal with proceedings in court. The Fifth and Sixth deal with criminal. Excuse me, I sneezed. That'll be on there, sorry. The Fifth Amendment deals with criminal proceedings. You can plead the Fifth, which means you cannot incriminate yourself if you do not want to. No double jeopardy, being tried twice for the same crime. Due process. This is the first of two due process clauses. This says the national government cannot deny life, liberty, and property. The 14th Amendment says states cannot deny life, liberty, property. Eminent domain. The government can seize private property for public use, but they have to pay fair market value. The Sixth Amendment, and this goes on to due process, the government cannot arbitrarily deny your right to life, liberty, or property. They have to treat each person under the law the same. Following established rules, treating all people fairly. The two clauses, the 5th and the 14th, against national and state, it does apply in eminent domain as well. And there's a visual of eminent domain, the government coming in to take your home or private property, but they must pay fair market value. The Bill of Rights, the Sixth Amendment, deals with what actually happens during a trial. What rights do the accused have? And in the 1960s, court cases really expanded this, such as Miranda versus Arizona and Escobedo versus Illinois. A speedy and public trial is guaranteed. Counsel by an attorney. You do have the right to hear an attorney. The right to confront witnesses against that have accused you, the right to know what you are being charged with, and the right to subpoena your own witnesses on your behalf. The Seventh Amendment deals basically with civil trials, but two cases that really articulate criminal. Miranda v. Arizona, which established the Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. People did not know what they could and couldn't do once they were charged. So police are now asked to give these. Anything you say can and will be used in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, the court will appoint one. And you can end questioning. Right here, you can decide at any time to exercise these rights and not answer a question. So those are what the police say. The Sixth Amendment, a famous case dealing with this, was Gideon v. Wainwright. He filed in forma pauperis, which means as a poor person, he had to defend himself because he could not provide for an attorney. The main ruling in Gideon versus Wainwright is in state law. States have to provide an attorney if a person cannot provide one for themselves or afford it. The Seventh Amendment is a right to a jury trial in civil matters in excess of $20, which is in most cases, so you might see a jury trial on that side. Eighth deals with punishment. No cruel and unusual punishment, and the bail and fine has to meet the crime. So if you stole a piece of chewing gum or it was a minor theft, it's probably not going to be $1 million bail. It has to fit the crime. Ninth Amendment deals with unenumerated rights. The Founding Fathers were aware that rights exist that they had not defined in the first 9 amendments, so they made this catch-all, the Ninth Amendment. So far, the right to privacy or immigration rights have been held to exist within the Ninth Amendment. Big cases that deal under the Ninth, the right to privacy, Griswold versus Connecticut, Roe v. Wade, dealing with abortion and the right to privacy the mother has over their own body. Those are examples that you could put under that. The last one is the 10th Amendment. Very simple. The 10th Amendment says any power not given to the U.S. or forbidden to the states is given to the states. It's called reserved powers. And this is a huge one. It really gives us our federal system of government, that division of power between federal and state governments. A court case that strengthened and increased the power of the federal government and the ability to tax is, of course, McCulloch versus Maryland. We studied this a while ago. This is the background, and it said, because we have the ability to stretch our power, that necessary and proper clause says it was okay at the time for the federal government to create a national bank, that was within their scope of authority. The Supreme Court also said the supremacy clause says if there's a conflict between state and federal, normally the U.S. Constitution is going to win. So therefore, national power on most occasions trumps state power. A couple court cases dealing with civil rights that I'd like to review quickly. Plessy v. Ferguson. The big one here, separate but equal, was upheld, and the court ruled that the 14th Amendment only gave African Americans political and civil equality, not social equality, that they didn't have to govern that. Several years later, in the court case Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Linda Brown was a 10-year-old girl. She was not permitted to attend a closer school to her neighborhood, which was all white children, specifically because of her race. And this court case went clear to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court overturned precedent, which was stare decisis, the Plessy v. Ferguson, and the court said separate is not or was not equal. And so segregation, therefore, was made illegal, and it allowed for paving the way for integration of black and white schools. Amendments that have dealt with suffrage. Remember, the 13th abolished slavery, the 14th granted citizenship and due process, the 15th granted suffrage, that you could not deny it based on the color of your skin or condition of servitude. The 19th gave women the right to vote, and the 26th Amendment gave 18 to 21-year-olds the right to vote. The Civil Rights Act, another civil rights portion, they continued to say you cannot deny access or refuse service in public accommodations such as restaurants, especially if you receive federal funding. You cannot discriminate on the grounds of race. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 says you cannot refuse to sell or rent to anyone on the account of race, color, or religion. So these two really paved the way, these congressional laws. Not only did the courts fight it, but the legislature fought for equality as well. The 15th Amendment really helped apply this to all elections, federal, state, and local. But they went into the states and they said, we have to help. This is when the voter drives went out into the states. The Freedom Riders, well, later down in the South, registering voters. But it suspended the use of literacy tests as a voting requirement and really ended, in a sense, a lot of those Jim Crow laws that had prevented African Americans from registering to vote. The last portion here, what's responsible voting, participating in juries, registering for the draft, obeying all laws. This is a great slide to read through. It's just giving really tribute to the Greeks for representative democracy, from the Romans as well, how the English brought over ideas. It's a wonderful slide, just really putting in all the history that has made us the nation we are today. The principle of majority rule and minority rights, we do not trample the rights of the minority. They always have a right to be heard. And the government tries to uphold that. The majority, we always go with majority rule, but that doesn't mean that a minority group does not have the right to speak and be heard. Freedom, remember, is never absolute. You can believe it, but when you act on those beliefs, you can be held responsible. That's called absolute rights versus relative rights. The minute this is the right to swing my fist ends where your nose begins means I can do whatever I want, but once I infringe upon somebody else, it can be limited. In America, we have equality of opportunity and equality before the law. We do not have equality of condition, and our government is not set up to promote that. Rather, equality of opportunity and equality before the law. Political parties, remember, the main source is to nominate to win in order to control government. We have a two-party system, and that two-party system it's between the Democrats and the Republicans and or conservative liberals, if you want to look at it in that sense. Interest groups, remember the main goal is to influence public policy, and they do that through donating. Remember, they can't donate money directly, so they create PACs, and the PACs donate money. And if you work for an interest group, you are called a lobbyist, and the lobbyists work just recommending legislation, informing different congressmen, etc., about votes coming up. This slide deals with liberal versus strict constructionist rule, either granting increased power for the federal government or keeping it narrow in scope and going with the strict constructionist view. The last three slides we did in class. These are review questions, and you can go over these. If you have any questions, please let me know on these last ones, but these are the ones that we did out loud. If you have any questions, you can email me. I wish you the best on the EOC. I hope you study. Hope these slides were helpful for review.